Welcome to the Sound of Movement podcast. Today we are continuing the talk on athletic development, which is the topic of the week. But we've got a very special show for you today. It's a physio special. We've got two exceptional sports physiotherapists here, and they're going to be talking to you about athletic development and injury.
Greetings. If you're new to the tribe, Rich is behind the mix. Rad is at the table with me, Yanni Burmeister, and we are Unity Gym experts at turning driven people into athletes. This episode is brought to you by the Unified Movement System, the only online program effectively balancing strength, flexibility, and fitness so you can unleash your inner athlete. Get daily coaching by us, plus our epic Foundations Prep program and revolutionary strength balance blueprint, structural balance blueprint to create your ideal program and optimize your performance. Now, as a valued listener tribe, use the link in the description to get your first month free. Before we get started, big warm welcome. If you're on the live stream in the UMS Movement Mastermind Facebook group, leave a comment and we'll send you some love. Remember, anyone can join and interact. And lastly, shout out to our YouTube athletes catching the replay. Hit that like button, support the channel, and subscribe if you like what you see. Okay, guys, we are joined today by Phil White and Nalesh Murthy from ADPT Physio. This is a physio special show. How are you guys going today?
Very well. I can see Nalesh cringing in the corner there as we've been improperly introduced by Rad, because the sports physio is actually like a title. So it's like saying, hey, we've got two cardiologists here and you're just talking to a couple of doctors. So just to clear that up, because I know if some physios who were titled who, I heard Rad say that'd be, banging the door down. But so I just wanted to jump in there, clear that up. But
in 3 months, you can call me that.
Yeah, so Nalesh is currently studying nonstop to be able to be called a sports physio.
Well, you heard it here first then.
Rad's just jumping the gun. He likes doing that. He's quick out of the box.
Just you kind of wouldn't even think it, because the type of physio that we're really passionate about is around people who are looking for athletic development, but it's the specialization side of things isn't as well known in physio. So
good
there you
stuff.
go, hot topic.
Good stuff. So before we get started, we want to rip out the question of the day. Have you got a question for the listeners, Phil?
Yeah, so have you started any new sports and activity this year? Because our topic today is really talking about overtraining, and we loved, and basically, injuries that kind of result from maybe going a bit hard at something new. So keen to hear if you have started anything new this year, and hopefully we'll hear some stories of success and not injury.
Yeah, we got a couple coming through.
And if you do have any sort of specific questions around sort of physiotherapy, obviously we can't do, it's not a consultation, so please, we're just giving general advice. But if you do have any, you want any help and want any, guidance on questions to either ask the health professionals you're already working with, or potentially work with us online, as long as you're not from the US, then do get some questions in the chat here, and we'll try and get them to them today.
Awesome. Let's quickly send some love to Craig Jenkins, Joseph Gilbert, Clay Conway. I was going to say Phil White, but he's there. And we've got some answers coming through already, which we'll get to soon. But first, we want to kick this off with today we're really going to be dialing in, of course, the drum of load management, but we want to talk about why it's so important to be patient with your goals, especially if you're starting a new physical activity or sport. We just had an interesting discussion with a friend of ours who I used to go to school with, and a lot of our friends are picking up sports sort of late in their 30s and 40s again, sports they used to play when they were young, and they're all experiencing injury and knee problems and things like that. And the reality is that the majority of them are just overdoing it. They're going at it too fast and not building a solid base or a foundation, we like to call it here. But this problem is not limited to general pops and everyday weekend warriors. This, the more we talk to Nalesh, who's working with athletes, it's actually an issue that professional athletes have too. So why don't you share a little bit of insight into your experiences working with pro athletes having the same problem? They're being impatient with their training and their goals.
Yeah, mate. So it's funny, we see this day in, day out, and actually we see it end of or start of every season. So we'll have a guy or an athlete that's 16, training for 2 years so they can get drafted, and they get selected to come into the big leagues, and they do at the age of 18, and they normally rock up an injury, overuse injury or a bone injury or something that's going to actually limit them to stop training now. So when it actually matters, when they need to perform, when they get drafted to the AFL, most of them will rock up injured.
But yeah, there's just so much pressure on that draft, like to get the team you want, and there's like such a like, you know, the being in the top 10 in the draft is such a like badge of honor that these kids just like cook
you get that identity. But when you get there and you rock up, and then you rock up to day one of pre-season, and you're doing a hammy, you've got some lower back stuff, you've got a bone stress, and then you go, so what did your past 12 months look like? Oh man, I just trained every day. I had a coach for running, had a coach for sprinting, had a coach for footy, I did boxing on the side as well. I did 7 days, but I made it. But then you know, like when it actually matters, they're done. We got to take the key out of the engine and rebuild it again. So
there's been so many stories of top 10 draft picks who've like their careers have just.
It's a common thing, and then as you know, like if the top 10's a label or identity, then you get identified as that new injured kid.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
so obviously it dives into what we've spoken about before, identity, but you know, it's overuse, over injury, overtraining, and ultimately you want progressive overload, which I don't think anyone does. They just want to get to the goal in week one or day one.
I just want to highlight something and bring it back to something that Nalesh said a couple of weeks ago, which was it's high load. That high load doesn't hurt people; it's how you get there, and I think that's just such a key thing to understand. And sometimes the term overuse can kind of put people off a bit, being like, oh, you know, I can't, you know, I don't want to be pursuing like sports because then if I do something too intense, like, you know, I might hurt myself. But it's so key to understand that if you prepare your body and you give yourself adequate rest on that journey to the high load, then there's no reason why the body can't handle it well. It's just it's how you get there. So
yeah, absolutely. And I had my own personal experience with this last year when I decided I'd start running again. I failed to progress my rehab after a knee reconstruction into running again, just purely because I didn't really make the time. It was not something that I couldn't do. I just didn't do it because we'd just opened the gym and I was busy, and I just figured that I'd just focus on my gym training and that would be okay. Of course, naturally, me being a bit of an idiot, went at it exactly the wrong way. And my first day decided to run. I thought, okay, I looked at the map, thought, it's about a 5K run over to the city and back, and just went at it, and could hardly walk for a week afterwards, and you know, really flared up some issues in my body that I've dealt with for a while now after that surgery, and Phil just sort of looked at me as the idiot that I was, and said, "Why did you go and run like that straight away?" And you know, it's really funny because you don't usually remember yourself as someone who can't do the thing. You remember yourself as the pinnacle or the peak that you were at, you know, and I've like run a lot in my life. I used to play high level rugby league, then soccer, and when I was boxing, I was running all the time. And so, you know, this notion of progressive overload and load management, it just gets like forgotten by a lot of people, and even myself, who is teaching people to do this. You know, it's quite embarrassing. You know,
it's funny, Yanni. You said, you know, you've tried to rehab your knee and went out for a run. Let me guess. The thing that got sore wasn't your knee. It's, you know, you end up coming away with a calf injury.
Oh, yeah,
or your foot gets sore, or your lower back gets sore. And it's just a never-ending train if you obviously start running or going down the hill straight away instead of climbing up the hill. So
yeah, that's right. You never really can choose where it was. I mean, I had this like Baker's cyst that blows up at the back of the knee, and then I've got perennial pain, and it's just it goes all over the place. But perennial. I am looking good. I'm looking good now. I'm running, but it was 6 months of progressive overload, you know, and I regress back to walking. And then, you know, building up to walking every day, and then building up to running, and then building up to running once a week, and now I'm running twice a week or 3 times a week, and walking the rest of the days. And yeah, it's, you know, my fitness is coming back, my speed is coming back, my lean gains are coming back. I even saw some abs today when I took my shirt off. It's looking good. It's all looking good. But we also have a story from one of our tribe.
I'm just too distracted still by this period. So this is a word that
if I was Yanni, I'd be regressing back to year 5 grammar. And
there's this annoying thing in anatomy where there are some words that sound very similar that just have entirely different meanings. And so when you say perennial pain, that means basically gooch.
Yeah.
Whereas like it's
Richard knows all about
perineal is
anyone
is the
who's got
outside
a
of
wife
your
who's
foot,
had
so.
children know about the perennial.
Yeah, so it's annoying that the perineals are like the
Anybody that spends a good weekend
on the
at Arc?
outside of let it alone, Rad, settle down. But yeah, basically
we're
the
on a
outside
podcast, come
of
on.
your shin is the perineal muscles of the fibularis if you're American. So that's just why we all the other three of us just did these ones. But yeah, you're spot on.
It was very close. It
yeah.
was very close. So let's talk about Lucio's story, because he's is Lucio Lucio's a UMS online coaching
he's on
tribe
the
member.
He even came into the gym the other day.
Yeah,
'cause he was
and
up with, playing
fine.
coach.
he's a classic. We're going to use. Sorry, Lucio. We're going to use you as an example here, because you have got a great story that we can hopefully give some value to everyone from. He has started cycling again this year, and
He's been doing 2 weeks of it after not doing much, in the past, and he's just suddenly developed pain in his just above his patella. So, and he's just wondering, is it maybe just too much too soon sort of thing, or if it's and maybe he should go back to just doing stuff in the gym, or if maybe cycling's not for him. So. And I thought like this is a good example of just that, when you're starting a new activity, which is just quite different from, what he's been doing. Like he's really committed to all his calisthenics work and all the work in the gym. And it's, he's saying he's just started doing 3 to 4 kilometers, which, for someone who's a high level cyclist isn't like, that would be a little warm up. But for someone who's never really done much cycling before, that can be a real change. So,
It's not so much. I mean, yes, of course, the distance is the volume, but it's also the frequency. The frequency is one of the big factors that we don't really take into consideration. Like you need enough time, and depending on how conditioned your body is to that specific activity, that you're going to need a greater time to recover if you're less conditioned, right? So we like to tell people that if they're new to something, 72 hours is the minimum that you should really give yourself a recovery, so that the supercompensation can take place and your body can adapt properly, and then of course you've got to manage the amount of volume and intensity of it as well. There's sort of those three variables.
I mean, well, I'd love to hear from like when you get some kids coming through at the Giants when they're starting out in their pre-season, like kind of what's it look like? Because I think this is a good example of someone who like people who are already like quite fit and athletic, just like Lucio is, but then often starting fairly new sort of activities.
Yeah,
so.
I think you're always going to have a bit of a spark up of something if you start something new. It's called DOMS, but then if it starts isolating to the top of your knee, as he's highlighted, I think you want to go back and go, okay, cool, we've started something new, but have we set ourselves up to manage this new exercise? So I'm not saying you sit at home and sit on a stationary bicycle to functional train, but you want to if you're going to do a 5k ride, is your quads developed there? Have you got some quad strength or quad exposure? You haven't cycled for a while, what's your flexibility like? If you haven't cycled for a while, it's going to get really technical here, but what's your seat height like? Again, there's so many different facets we can look into, but I think you got it spot on. If you go do a ride on Monday, it felt great. Go do a ride on Tuesday, that felt great. Get to Wednesday, I'm a bit sore now. So you've hit it on the nail there.
So I'll do a lighter ride on Wednesday. That's how my brain works with my running.
So frequency is, it's good to have a deload or so forth. You want to have the intensity, but frequency is what really matters, and when and how.
Yeah.
But you also want to be conditioned for it. Like I know 4 or 5Ks for some might not sound like much, but you want to be conditioned for 4 or 5Ks, and the only way you condition yourself is if you build yourself up to it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Rad had a really great story coming out of the military where the popularity of barefoot running took off, and I was in the gym wearing those little Vibram 5 fingers, and it was very trendy to do so, and Rad decided to give him a crack in the military, and then he decided to wear them through his PT, right? What happened there?
Well, I had a few things I was going to say, but I was going to actually save them for a sports physio. I was going to see if I could. I came down to Sydney and everybody was in the Vibrams, and they were the cool thing to do. And at the time I was learning a lot from Aaron over at his gym, and everybody was running around barefoot. And so I got some Vibrams and I took them back, and we went on a run. And the good thing about the Army is that you don't get to choose anything that you do. You just do what they tell you to do. And we went on a light run that day for 8Ks, and I Actually, the run felt all right. I was like, oh, wow, these are interesting. It's different. You got to struck the ground with your toes, and it's all different. And I was a bit sore afterwards, and the next day, the DOMs kicked in, and they got worse and worse and worse until about day 4, and I couldn't even, I'll never forget it, because you got to march in the army, you got to march everywhere, and there's a gait that you have to take, a gait pattern, and I couldn't step my foot behind my pelvis where I went on my toes at all because the DOMs were so bad. I had to walk with only putting my feet in front of me, and I had to basically, you have to get what's called a medical chit, which is a little piece of paper from a doctor that says you don't have to do X, Y, and Z because you're injured. And I had to get a medical chit because my DOMs were so bad I couldn't walk, and it was so funny.
Sick bay.
I got out of one of the biggest parades that these guys had to do, and a parade is like one of the worst things that you have to do in the army. You got to stand out in the sun, and you got to turn this way and salute and go that way and march for like 3 hours, and I was the only one. A battalion, there was like 300 guys out there, and I was standing on the side in the shade because I had a shit. It said I didn't have to march. It was so funny.
God.
Everyone hated me for it.
And look, this is another example of the mismanagement of load and how it can end up causing like quite severe.
Yeah, exactly. Because people, there are plenty of people who do run in, either barefoot or those sandals that, that became popular with the Born to Run book, or people who run purely barefoot. I think there was a guy who was just doing the Boston Marathon run, and he did like 3 hours 40 or something, and he ran in a loincloth and totally barefoot, which was
to the
unreal.
next level.
But like, they did a little interview.
He went full.
And he grew,
minimalist.
he
never go full minimalist.
he grew his hair out as well, and he was really playing into it. But he kind of wanted to show that people get so lost in like. All the latest developments of all the gear can be a bit of like almost like a paralysis for people who just think, I can't do it because I don't get the right shoes. And so he spent a year gradually training up to do it totally barefoot, and he did it. But that's the key thing, is he spent a year getting there. He didn't just go, I'm going to run the barefoot the Boston Marathon barefoot. He would have
back to Nalesh's
and so
quote.
for the calves, like by not having a bit of a slope foot in your shoe, that really like puts a whole lot more load through the calves in that running style. It forces you a bit more forefoot, and that's going to heavily overload the calves. And as for people who've conditioned to that, totally fine. But for people who haven't,
it's a new stimulus just going to tip you over.
Yeah. Do you remember talking about all the gear? Do you remember in Fitness First those guys that used to come in for the spin classes at lunchtime?
Oh goodness me!
There were dudes that used to come in for the spin classes for a stationary bike class.
With sunglasses on.
But they had the full. They looked like they were ready for Tour de France, mate. They had the full bike gear. They had the cleat shoes on.
Some people take this.
The cleats make a big difference.
Very seriously.
All the gear, no idea, isn't it?
Blakely here is saying they're still cool, referring to Vibrams, and mate.
They're still cool,
absolutely are.
Well, we train barefoot all the time, and if I was training at a gym where they didn't allow you to train barefoot, if you had to wear shoes, I'd be wearing Vibrams 100%, and that's what we used to do at Fitness First. We used to wear our Vibrams. But Blakely, the only reason why we don't wear Vibrams is that we have a gym that allows us to train barefoot because we know the bosses, so we know the owners.
That's right. And we found Fayus. Fayers are about 1/10 of the price. Look, guys. This is where we want to really just bang home the most important message of today, which is patience. If you guys attack your training, no matter what you're doing, without patience, and you are impatiently trying to achieve a goal or a result, it most of the time will end in probably worse than stiff calves. It'll end in some form of an injury where you end up really, really needing the support and consultation of the two boys at the end of the table here, which is not a bad thing because it does support their kids going through university and all that sort of thing. We really want you guys to understand that. Especially in Lucio's, the answer is no. It's not that cycling is not for him. It's just that he needs to find the right entry point for himself and manage his load so that he's just exposing himself to that new exercise at the right level. He's managing his load, and that for some people like Lucio might be a very minimal amount and only once a week for now, and then he'll move up to twice a week and a little bit more exposure and then a little bit more, and it might take him 6 months to get to the point where he's cycling 100 kilometres and just crushing it. But that's okay.
Yeah, and that's a perfect definition of progressive overload.
Yeah.
Perfect definition for it. So.
And you just got to remember that with some people think I spend all this time in the gym, I do my squats, I do all this quad strengthening stuff. I should be able to just jump on a bike and have quads that are, bulletproof to cycling. But that's where specificity of your training really comes into it. And we've talked before about, muscle fiber types and, contractile types. And your body adapts to what you spend your time doing. So if you've spent all your time doing sort of just pure weights training and you sort of max reps, maybe in a endurance phase would be up to 12 reps. We'd rarely do more than that for a squat, for example. So you've basically, then you jump on a bike and now suddenly you're doing 90 RPM or something around that is generally around the sweet spot for cycling. Suddenly although it's a much lower load, it's a totally different contractile type and different energy systems as well involved in it. And so that's why it doesn't just work seamlessly get strong quads, have strong quads for everything. So it's really it becomes a bit of a an art and a science of understanding how you can adapt your gym programs to assist in these other sort of cardio sports, but at the end of the day, you've just got to try and you've got to gradually change things. You can't just jump in and change things drastically.
Yeah, and it's it's something that you have to also take into consideration that in most cases you're adding that new activity to gym too. So there's that variable there that you've now got two different types of stimulus that are going to not compete with each other, but they're going to add to each other. That to the load bucket that we use the answer for. So if you're already filling your bucket in the gym and then you add cycling to that, the bucket is obviously going to overflow. And so you may need to make adjustments there as well. Now, let's just rip through a few of these comments because we do have a few people answering the question of the day. And we do have the online coaching coming in for so we got to bring this in for a landing. So everyone who is part of the online coaching group will be there in 4 minutes exactly, or maybe a minute after, but because Richie's got to change the stream over. But get ready for our daily group coaching call. So first and foremost, we got Joseph Gilbert saying, didn't start this year, but on week 8 of Couch to 5K running program, which is awesome. Good work. Which is essentially a really great beginner running program. And
also great for someone who's used to be a really good runner and has taken time off running. So that's the thing. It's not just beginners, it's anyone who's not been doing it for a long time. So
correct.
It was a bizarre experience walking for months on end. And I built up to being quite a quick walker, but I was probably the most buff looking dude on the bridge and you got all these people that were way more out of shape than me banging past me jogging and I'm walking, but it's just the way you got to do it. I'll be doing it for a long time. He's also said, Joseph Gilbert's also said, today was day 1, week 1 of Foundations Phase 3. Ouchie, my ego. It does shock you. It's a general prep program, but it's not an easy program. And we got Clay Conway saying, woohoo, you said my name right.
It's little things.
It's not a hard one to get, Clay. And then we got Joseph Gilbert going, can you DM info about virtual consultation? We've done that.
Yeah, for anyone who is interested about online and virtual consultations, head along to our website, which is adpt.physio. So not .com, .physio. And you can find out more there. Or send us an email at team@adpt.physio and we'll sort you out.
And they will take good care of you. Craig Jenkins is saying, answer the question, not yet, but was looking to start jiu-jitsu, and here's the clincher, and possibly rugby. I'm assuming that's real rugby because he said real rugby here. Contact list, bucket list stupidity. I'm 70 kilograms and will probably get broken in half, but it will be fun getting broken in half, and that's the important thing. I quit playing rugby league in my teens because I was literally getting broken in half and I got knocked out too many times in 1 year, and so I went and boxed.
And this is the guy they're all listening to?
Yeah, that's right. But look, man, good luck with that. Just my advice is put on as much muscle as possible. Get your body strong. The more, generally the more strength you've got, the more cushion for the bruising. Well, it's true. Going and playing a contact sport when you're an adult, it's painful. It is really painful. But the jiu-jitsu is amazing. Jiu-jitsu I love. My kids do a bit of jiu-jitsu, and it's a really great movement practice because it's just, you move in all sorts of different ways. It's good fun. So crush that. Good luck with all of that. And I think that's pretty much
Well, we got to get on our
it.
coaching call.
Yeah.
So let's do that.
All right, guys, we're going to jump over to the other group now. If you're not part of the UMS online coaching, what are you doing?
You're missing out on the real coaching because this is just this is just shit talking on this show.
Oh, what are you talking about? Okay, guys.
I think it's important to quickly just talk about the difference. So, here is all about sort of general education, and we're hoping to give you all the tools you need to figure it out yourself. But in the online coaching, what we're doing is analyzing videos,
coaching.
doing very specific things. So, that's the next step.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
All right, guys. Join us tomorrow. Tune in. We're going to continue on with our athletic development series. We're going to be talking about the role of a strength coach. No, we're not. We're talking about the variables of progress, movement, complexity. Ooh, we're going deep. We'll see you all tomorrow. And for the online coaching tribe, we'll see you in a couple of minutes. Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, it's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that
It's
far.
the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.